My friend, lean in close. I want to share with you one of the most profound secrets I've discovered in my lifetime of studying human achievement. It's a principle that sounds backwards, contradictory even, but once understood, it becomes the very foundation of all true success. The more you release, the more you become. Think about that for a moment. In a world that teaches us to grasp, to hold tight, to accumulate and possess, I'm telling you that the path to becoming more lies in letting go. This isn't some mystical riddle I'm proposing. This is practical wisdom born from decades of observing the minds of America's most successful individuals. Picture, if you will, a mighty oak tree in autumn. Does it cling desperately to its leaves, afraid that letting them fall will diminish its power? No. The oak releases freely, understanding that this act of surrender prepares it for new growth, stronger branches, deeper roots. The tree doesn't become less by releasing its leaves. It becomes ready for greater things. You see, my friend, most people live with clenched fists, both literally and metaphorically. They hold on to their money so tightly that it can't flow back to them multiplied. They clutch their ideas so possessively that these ideas never grow into something magnificent. They grasp at relationships so desperately that they suffocate the very love they're trying to preserve. But what if I told you that your capacity to receive is directly proportional to your willingness to release? What if the very thing you're afraid to let go of is the very thing preventing you from having more of what you truly desire? Let me take you back to a conversation I once had with Andrew Carnegie. We were sitting in his study, surrounded by books and papers, and I noticed something remarkable. Despite being one of the wealthiest men in America, Carnegie spoke constantly about giving away his fortune. Not because he had to, but because he understood something profound about the nature of wealth itself. He told me, Napoleon, money is like water. If you try to hold it in your cupped hands, it will eventually leak through your fingers. But if you channel it, direct it, let it flow through projects and purposes larger than yourself, it returns to you like a mighty river. This wasn't theory for Carnegie. This was lived experience. The more he gave away, the more opportunities presented themselves. The more he released control over every detail of his businesses, the more they flourished under capable management. The more he shared his knowledge and resources, the more valuable connections and insights flowed back to him. But let's dig deeper into this principle, because releasing isn't just about money or material possessions. It's about something far more fundamental. It's about releasing the false self, the ego-driven identity that insists on controlling every outcome, that demands credit for every success, that fears every change as a threat to its existence. When you release the need to be right all the time, you become open to learning. When you release the need to control every detail, you become available for opportunities you never could have planned. When you release old grudges and resentments, you become free to build new, more powerful relationships. I remember speaking with a young entrepreneur years ago. He came to me frustrated, working 18-hour days, trying to manage every aspect of his growing business. He was exhausted, his family was suffering, and ironically, his business was starting to stagnate despite all his efforts. I asked him a simple question. What are you afraid will happen if you release control of some of these responsibilities? His answer revealed everything. He was afraid that without his direct oversight, things would fall apart. He was afraid that if he delegated important tasks, he would become less valuable, less necessary. But here's what he couldn't see. His desperate grip on control was actually limiting his business's potential. By trying to do everything himself, he had become the bottleneck in his own success. His company could only grow as fast as he could personally manage, which wasn't very fast at all. Together, we developed a plan for him to gradually release different responsibilities to capable team members. It wasn't easy. The first few weeks were uncomfortable. He felt a loss of identity, a fear that he was becoming irrelevant in his own company. But something remarkable began to happen. As he released operational control, he discovered he had time to think strategically about the business's future. As he released the need to make every decision personally, his team members began showing initiative and creativity he never knew they possessed. As he released his grip on the day-to-day management, the business began to run more smoothly than it ever had under his micromanagement. Within 6 months, his company had doubled in size. Within a year, it had expanded into 3 new markets. By releasing control, he hadn't become less valuable to his business. He had become infinitely more valuable as a visionary leader rather than a manager of details. This is the paradox that most minds struggle to comprehend. You must lose your life to find it. You must give away your power to become truly powerful. You must release what you have to receive, what you're capable of having. But let's explore this from another angle. Consider the nature of fear itself. Fear, at its core, is about holding on. Fear holds on to past traumas, projecting them into the future. Fear holds on to familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve us. Fear holds on to a small, safe identity rather than risking the expansion into who we might become. Every act of release is an act of courage. When you release a limiting belief about yourself, you're courageously stepping into unknown territory. When you release a toxic relationship, you're bravely making space for healthier connections. When you release old ways of doing things, you're boldly opening yourself to innovation and improvement. I've observed that the people who achieve the greatest success in life are those who become comfortable with this cycle of release and renewal. They understand that everything in life has seasons. There's a time to plant, a time to nurture, a time to harvest, and yes, a time to let the field lie fallow so it can restore itself for the next cycle. Think about the farmer who saves some of his best grain not to eat, but to plant next season. This act of release, of not consuming all that he has, multiplies his future harvest. The grain he releases into the soil doesn't disappear. It transforms into something far greater than what it was. Your thoughts, your energy, your resources work the same way. When you hoard them, they stagnate. When you release them purposefully, they multiply and return to you in expanded form. But here's where many people misunderstand this principle. Release is not about being careless or reckless with what you have. It's not about giving away your resources without thought or purpose. True release is conscious, intentional, and strategic. When you release, you're not throwing things away randomly. You're making conscious choices about what no longer serves your highest good so you can make space for what will serve you better. You're not abandoning responsibility. You're choosing where to direct your energy for maximum impact. Let me share with you a story that illustrates this beautifully. I once knew a woman who had spent 20 years building a successful law practice. She was respected in her field, financially secure, and by all external measures, living a successful life. But she came to me deeply unhappy, feeling trapped in a career that no longer brought her joy. She had always been passionate about education, particularly about helping underprivileged children learn to read. But she felt she couldn't pursue this passion because it would mean releasing her established career, her steady income, her professional identity. We talked about what releasing might look like in her situation. Not a sudden, reckless abandonment of everything she'd built, but a gradual, thoughtful transition that honored both her current responsibilities and her deeper calling. She began by volunteering at a local literacy center one evening per week. This small act of release, giving up one evening of her comfortable routine, opened something inside her. She found herself more energized than she'd been in years. The joy she experienced in that literacy center began to transform how she approached her law practice as well. Gradually, she began reducing her law practice, taking on fewer clients, releasing income she thought she needed. But something remarkable happened. As she aligned more closely with her true purpose, opportunities began appearing that she never could have imagined. A foundation approached her about developing literacy programs. A publisher asked her to write children's books. Speaking opportunities arose that paid more than she'd ever earned per hour as a lawyer. By releasing what she thought she needed to hold on to, she became someone she never thought possible. She didn't just change careers. She transformed into a person living from her deepest purpose and passion. This brings me to another crucial aspect of this principle. When you release, you're not just letting go of external things. You're releasing internal limitations. You're letting go of old versions of yourself that no longer fit who you're becoming. Every growth requires this kind of release. The caterpillar must release its form to become a butterfly. The seed must release its shell to become a tree. You must release who you've been to become who you're capable of being. But this process can be uncomfortable, even frightening. There's a period in the caterpillar's transformation where it's neither caterpillar nor butterfly. It's something undefined, vulnerable, in transition. Many people abort their own transformation because they can't tolerate this period of uncertainty. They prefer the familiar limitations of their current identity to the unknown possibilities of their expanded self. They choose the security of a small, defined life over the adventure of becoming something greater. Yet this period of release and transition is where all real growth happens. It's where you develop new capacities, new perspectives, new possibilities. It's where you discover resources within yourself that you never knew existed. I want you to consider what you might be holding on to right now that's preventing you from becoming more than you are. Perhaps it's a belief about what you're capable of achieving. Perhaps it's a relationship that's based on who you used to be rather than who you're becoming. Perhaps it's a job that pays your bills but doesn't feed your soul. Perhaps it's simply old habits and routines that keep you small and safe. Whatever it is, I want you to understand that holding on to it isn't protecting you, it's imprisoning you. The very thing you're afraid to release is the very thing that's preventing you from experiencing the abundance, joy, and fulfillment you desire. Now, let me be clear about something important. This principle of release doesn't mean you should be reckless or impulsive. True wisdom involves discernment. You release what no longer serves your highest good, and you do so with intelligence and planning. Before you release anything significant, ask yourself, what am I making space for? What do I want to invite into my life? How does this release serve my growth and the growth of others? Release without vision is just destruction. Release with clear intention and purpose is creation. It's making space for the new to emerge. Think of your life as a garden. If you never pull the weeds, they'll crowd out the flowers. If you never prune the bushes, they'll become wild and unproductive. If you never clear away the fallen leaves, they'll prevent new growth from reaching the sunlight. The gardener doesn't remove things from the garden because he hates them. He removes them because he loves the garden and wants it to flourish. In the same way, you release things from your life not out of rejection, but out of love for who you're becoming. Consider your daily habits and routines. How much of what you do each day is based on who you were last year rather than who you're becoming this year? How many of your automatic responses and reactions are serving the person you used to be rather than the person you're growing into? Every morning, you have the opportunity to consciously choose what to carry forward from yesterday and what to release. You can release yesterday's disappointments, failures, and frustrations, choosing instead to carry forward its lessons and insights. You can release yesterday's version of yourself that was smaller, more afraid, less wise, and step into today's version that's more courageous, more knowing, more capable. This daily practice of conscious release and renewal is one of the most powerful habits you can develop. It keeps you flexible, adaptable, and always growing. It prevents you from getting stuck in patterns that once served you but now limit you. I've noticed that the most successful people I've studied have mastered this art of continuous release and renewal. They don't get emotionally attached to strategies that worked in the past if those strategies aren't working in the present. They don't hold on to business models, relationships, or even beliefs that have outlived their usefulness. This doesn't make them cold or calculating. It makes them alive, responsive, and creative. They understand that in a changing world, the price of clinging to what was is missing what could be. Let me share one more story that beautifully illustrates this principle. I once knew a master craftsman who made exquisite furniture by hand. His pieces were works of art, and he could have made a comfortable living creating them for wealthy clients for the rest of his life. But this craftsman understood the principle we're discussing. Instead of hoarding his knowledge and skills, he began teaching young apprentices. He released his secrets, his techniques, his hard-earned wisdom. Many people told him he was foolish. Why would he train his own competition? Why would he give away what had taken him decades to learn? But the craftsman understood something his critics didn't. By teaching others, he was forcing himself to examine and refine his own understanding. By explaining his techniques to beginners, he discovered new insights and innovations. By sharing his knowledge, he created a network of skilled craftspeople who became collaborators rather than competitors. Within a few years, his small workshop had become a school that attracted students from around the world. His reputation grew far beyond what it had been when he was working alone. The furniture his school produced became legendary for its quality and innovation. By releasing his knowledge, the craftsman didn't diminish his own value. He multiplied it exponentially. He became not just a craftsman, but a teacher, a leader, an innovator. His influence extended far beyond what any single person working alone could achieve. This is the magic of release. It transforms you from someone who has something into someone who creates something. It shifts you from a position of scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. When you truly understand that you can create value rather than just possess it, you realize that sharing what you have doesn't diminish you. It expands you. As we near the end of our time together, I want you to reflect on this question. What would your life look like if you fully embraced this principle? What if you released your grip on outcomes and focused instead on excellence in your efforts? What if you released your need for approval and followed your inner guidance? What if you released your fear of failure and fully committed to your dreams? Picture yourself 6 months from now, having consciously practiced this principle of release in your daily life. You've released the relationships that drained your energy, making space for connections that inspire and support you. You've released the activities that filled your time without adding value, creating space for pursuits that align with your deepest purpose. You've released the beliefs that limited your potential, opening yourself to possibilities you couldn't even imagine today. How different would you feel? How much more alive, authentic, and powerful would you be? How much more value could you create in the world when you're operating from this place of conscious release and renewal? This isn't just philosophy, my friend. This is practical wisdom that can transform every aspect of your life. Start small. Notice one thing today that you're holding on to out of fear rather than love. One belief, one habit, one possession, one grudge. Practice releasing it consciously and lovingly, making space for something better to emerge. Pay attention to how this feels. Notice any resistance that arises. Be gentle with yourself through this process. Remember, you're not losing anything real. You're only releasing illusions that have kept you smaller than you truly are. The more you practice this principle, the more natural it becomes. You begin to see release not as loss, but as liberation. You begin to understand that everything you truly need will come to you when you create space for it. You begin to trust the process of life itself, which is always moving toward greater expression, expansion, and fulfillment. And here's the beautiful paradox. As you become more willing to release, you discover that you have more to give. As you become more generous with your time, energy, and resources, you find that these things multiply in your experience. As you become more open to change and growth, you find that life responds with opportunities and possibilities beyond your wildest imagination. This is not magic, though it may seem magical. This is natural law, as reliable as gravity or thermodynamics. The universe operates on principles of circulation, flow, and exchange. When you align yourself with these principles through conscious release, you tap into forces greater than your individual willpower or effort. So I leave you with this invitation. Begin today to practice the art of conscious release. Look at your life with fresh eyes and honest assessment. What are you clutching that's preventing your growth? What are you protecting that's actually imprisoning you? What old version of yourself are you maintaining out of habit rather than choice? Release it lovingly. Thank it for whatever service it provided in your past. Then let it go with gratitude and excitement for what's coming next. Trust that as you make space in your life, that space will be filled with something more aligned with who you're becoming. The more you release, the more you become. This is not just a principle of success. This is a principle of life itself. It's how the universe grows, how nature evolves, how consciousness expands. By practicing this principle, you align yourself with the fundamental creative forces of existence. And when you do that, my friend, you don't just succeed in the conventional sense. You become a force for good in the world, a source of inspiration for others, a living demonstration of what's possible when someone has the courage to let go of what they are in order to become what they might be. Start today. Start now. Release something small and notice how it feels. Then trust the process to guide you toward ever greater releases and ever greater becomings. Your future self is waiting for you to have the courage to let go of who you've been so you can discover the magnificent being you truly are. The more you release, the more you become. Remember this, practice this, live this, and watch as your life transforms in ways more wonderful than you can currently imagine.